My topic is metal detectors, and the major claim is that metal detectors in schools have severe negative consequences for the education as well as the school population. My first claims are that school violence has majorly decreased and is actually rather rare. Also that metal detectors take away from education, and metal detectors have bad psychological consequences for students. So going back to my first claim, the school violence is rare. The frequency of school violence on school grounds has significantly decreased since the census that was taken in 1993, and then there was another one that was done in 2005. Violence on school grounds is less likely to occur than violence away from school grounds. Also, in the most recent school year for homicide data that was available, which is from 2003 to 2004, homicides of school-age children were about 50 times more likely to occur away from school than at school. Also, serious violent victimization rates were lower at school than away from school for each survey from 1993 through 2006. During the same time, violent crime rate at school dropped by 54%, and theft at school dropped by 65%. Also, metal detector use has done little to protect the students. 1 in 4 major school districts report using a metal detector in each state, so that's actually a pretty wide range. And as of May 30th, 2001, 2 school districts in California, the Los Angeles Unified School District and Inglewood Unified, use metal detectors on a regular basis, and this is pretty much they consider this using it daily, which amounts to at least 1 class for each school. And then the findings, when they actually surveyed these metal detectors to see how much they helped them reduce crime rate, Inglewood Unified reported detecting 1 knife and 1 gun over a 5-year period. However, they did find guns and knives on the school premises that they actually didn't detect at all that were found on the school premises. And then, according to Bill Ybarra, who is the director of the Los Angeles County Board of Education Safe School Center, he said that the most effective crime deterring strategies have been beefing up patrols. And when asked what he thought about metal detectors, he said that's a time-consuming type of search that doesn't yield much. Also, student reports of bullying and feeling safe at school were similar regardless of the presence of security measures such as security guards, staff hallway monitors, and metal detectors at the school. And this was a study conducted by the School Safety Research in December of 2006. Going to the second claim, metal detectors take away from education. Metal detector is actually fairly costly. On average, 1 metal detector costs from $2,500 to $3,800. And so this, for example, is $3,800. This is enough money for 3 computers or a classroom of textbooks. Also, 1 metal detector for every 500 students is what the school usually accounts to. So if you have a high school with about 2,000 students, you would need 4 detectors, as well as space to implement these detectors. You need hallways, you need to take away from the actual construction of the school, as well as you need staff that would need to be on duty to operate this machinery, as well as part-time staff that would be able to have to maintain this equipment. The Cleveland School District spent $3.7 million on hiring 50 more full-time armed security guards to patrol schools and up to 150 part-time guards to operate the screening of this equipment. And you know, when they say that art programs and stuff are being taken away, you start to think, where's the money going? Metal detectors take away from student class time, forcing hundreds of students to rally up in lines and take off their backpacks. You have to search them. It takes away from class time because they could be spending anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15 minutes at each of these stations. And so, obviously, that's not really beneficial for their education. And metal detectors require maintenance, so the cost of maintaining equipment is often more than actually purchasing the equipment. So if we're spending millions of dollars on purchasing it, how much are we actually spending on maintaining it? Lastly, metal detectors have bad psychological consequences for students. Interviews with students suggest that metal detectors are associated with prison-like atmosphere, so students feel like they're constantly being watched, which doesn't really allow them to enjoy their school environment. And in a study conducted by the School Safety Council, about 60% of students reported feeling like they were being constantly watched in schools, and this made them feel uncomfortable. Metal detectors create feelings of distrust and dehumanization. School counselors in several school districts have reported a decline of trust in the educational system as a result of this use. And metal detectors and the feelings associated have been associated with lower school attendance and a dislike of school. More than 40% of students have reported that they are less likely to want to attend school if they employ metal detectors. So overall, they have a fairly negative effect, and that's why I support the fact that they have severe negative effects on education and student life.
Hey, Jasna, I thought you had a very clear statement of the proposition, although right at the end it has multiple parts to it, so you want to make that a more singular claim. The main points were very nicely set up at the beginning of the speech. I think you need to show a little bit more about the controversy in the background. We kind of developed the controversy as we were listening to the speech, and I think as background and lead-in, it would be helpful to know the context a little bit more. You did a good job signposting your supporting claims as you went through the speech. It was always very clear where you were at any given point. The first point is really about the needs, not so much the consequences. So its relevance, I think, is a little bit problematic. But the second and the third points clearly point to the proposition that you're working on. On your evidence, you've got a good example with Inglewood that you're using. You've got some very good statistics on violence numbers, and there's some good factual data about the variety of places that are using this kind of equipment. I thought on the cost issues you did a nice job, for the most part, talking about the cost of the equipment. You make an explanation about what the issues are regarding staffing costs for those kinds of things. The proof that you have on that is the Cleveland information, and it seems to me like the Cleveland information mixes the information, because some of it's on the patrol issue, which you seem to think is fine, and some of it's on the metal detector issue. I'm not sure if they distinguish what the costs are on each of those. But the general issue, I think, is pretty clearly explained, that there is some economic consequence there, and I think you did an okay job explaining that. The third argument, I think, is the one that's a little underdeveloped, the psychological effects. I think the evidence that you have here is pretty vague. Counselors respond. The one statistic, 40% said that they wouldn't want to go to school with the metal detectors. Is that because they have the metal detectors, or is it because they need the metal detectors? I think that there's a big inference being made there from the statistic that is, I'm not sure, the one that you want to make. Sometimes I thought you were rushing a little bit through the presentation, but you had a good exit line at the end of the speech, and so it was clear that you were finished there. Thank you very much.